Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's Mike Ames recruitment show, where we are going to be talking about how to become a master delegator with Mike. And before I get into this, I just want to apologize for last week. We couldn't go live on LinkedIn. There was a technical issue, so hopefully this week we're all good to go. So, Mike, I guess Delegation won the poll about what people wanted to talk about this week.
Apparently it did, actually, and for good reason. If you can't delegate properly, you can't scale. It is simple as that. If you delegate, if you learn to delegate properly, not only do you scale well, but you've got less of that backtracking where you delegated something, it went wrong, and you need to fix it now, and then that takes time and effort, and you're back on again. Delegate properly, the scale just continues to grow. And in fact, I don't know whether I've used this quote before with you many times. J.C. Penney, that famous American retailer, said the most seminal moment in my business career was when I realized I couldn't do it all myself. And I think that's all about delegation, a recognition of it. In fact, all great leaders can delegate. That's the thing with delegation, is that everyone knows how to properly delegate. I don't mean abdicate, where you just let things go. I don't mean share, where you kind of give people stuff, but you're still responsible for it, so you still own it, because that's not scalable either. What we're talking about is making that difference. And of course, what it actually does, more than anything else, is it breaks the link between your efforts and your rewards. So a mark of a scalable business is when there's no correlation between how hard you, as the leader in that business, work and how much money you make.
Yeah.
Right? That's the deal. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about how to be a master delegator. I used to do it as a job years ago to train people in delegation. I don't do it so much now, really, but it's such a powerful thing. And I'm so keen for people to get on this, that hence the show, really. And everybody else is too, else we wouldn't be doing it, would we, I suppose?
Exactly. Okay, so I am in a second going to ask you a question about sort of teams and if you're a solopreneur. But first, what I wanted to do is we like everybody's involvement who's watching. So we're going to talk about this in a second, but first we wanted your ideas about what you think makes delegation go wrong. So this could be as a leader, why you think it doesn't work, or perhaps if you think back to when you had things delegated to you, why you think it didn't work then. So if everybody could just let us know one or two in the comments about what they think causes delegation to go wrong, we're going to come to that in a second. But first, Big Mike, I have a question for you, which is we have a lot of solopreneurs who deal with us, and so delegation isn't really that relevant to them because it's just them. So what would you say to that?
Au contraire is what I'd say to that. It absolutely is, because everybody uses suppliers. And these days, we all have virtual teams, don't we? We have people that do stuff for us in the outside world. And a delegation, when you hire someone to do something for you, either somebody who's going to give you a service or someone that is an extension of you, like a personal assistant, except virtual, you're delegating all the time. And the same rules apply. And I would argue, in fact, that you need to be even more diligent with those rules, because they're not sitting with you. You don't know them personally. You don't know the strengths and weaknesses. You don't know what they've done for you before. They're people external to your business. So you have to nail that delegation. So even if you're on your own, this is extremely relevant in my humble opinion, for its worth.
In your humblest of opinions. Okay, yeah. I think that's one thing that we've massively advocate on the show, is having virtual teams. So, okay, so even if you're watching this and you're thinking it's just me, I don't need to. If you want to break that link between your effort and your reward, virtual teams and delegation are going to be key to it. Okay, so Mike, let's go on to this. Let's go on to what you think makes delegation go wrong, because it does. I've been delegated to, I've delegated, and I've had both of them sort of fall apart in my face. So what kind of big things do you think make it go wrong?
Well, I've been in the past the worst possible delegator in the world, really. And all of the rules that I'm now going to talk to you about, I have broken them or ignored them. So I'm a bit of an expert on this. The first thing, the most important thing, is that you don't really clearly communicate what it is that you want. So in your head, you know what you want. Got it perfectly in my head. I know exactly what it is. You say some words or you send an email, but those words, that conversation or that email doesn't contain everything in your head, but you think it does. So what the person receives is not necessarily what you transmitted. And therefore what they do is different to what you expect. That is very common. And in fact, today, the focus of today is to nail that thing, to stop that from happening. Because I'd say it's
communication, really.
50% the reason why things go wrong. The second reason is that you delegate something to somebody who isn't able to do it. Now, that could be that they don't have the ability or the attitude or the approach. Fair enough. There's not much you can do about that. But it could be that they don't have the knowledge or the skills. We can teach them to do that. I'm going to talk about that a little later. Or it could be they just don't have the time. They're stacked out already.
Especially if you've got someone who's incredibly competent within your business who just pick up things. You know, it normally tends to be somebody is great at one thing. So if you've got somebody who's great at technology, but everyone loads technology things on them, well, they only have so many hours in the workday. So they're going to get overwhelmed and either not do it well or take too long or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, in the world of recruitment now, those people, those recruiters who are good, what they do, are being overwhelmed with work. And they can't cope with it all. And it's causing massive problems. And these problems are far reaching than just being a bit snowed under. They're damaging your reputation, and it's caused for exactly that reason, which I think is next week's show, isn't it? I think we're going to...
It is, and I will mention that at the end. We are talking about kind of when things go.
But that is a problem. So you're right. Efficient people attract more work, and there comes a point where they can't cope anymore. So that's a big deal. The other thing I think with delegation is that I don't know whether you'd say it's an overwhelm, but sometimes people just won't push back.
Yeah.
They should say, do you know what? I can do that, but I can't do it by then. If you want me to do it by then, which of these other things do you want to take off me? Or alternatively, I can't do that because I don't really know how. People don't like to have those conversations. And as a result, of course, I can do that, and it doesn't get done. And people think,
what's worse as well is they end up getting into a bad headspace because they're panicking. And I mean, that's what I've done in the past. You know, someone says to you and you go, oh yeah, okay, I'll do it. And then you think, I can't do it. And then you it's like kind of when you're at school, you want your mom to ring in and say you're sick on a maths test day. So yeah, people not pushing back or not.
Just go back. So you did that then?
What?
You did that then? You phoned in, got mom to phone in sick on a maths test day?
Hello? No, I don't know what you're talking about. No. So people not pushing back is a key thing. And then is there anything else that I think, because I can think of one more which is very relevant to sort of business owners.
Share it with us then.
Which is the sort of not wanting to delegate because they either fear it's going to fail or think that I'll do better myself. Like I know I'll do it.
How could I have forgotten that one? You know what? If you want to develop people, you have to create an environment in which they can fail safely. That is the way you really accelerate someone's development, right? Absolutely. And a key part of that is delegation. We're going to talk about this a little later on. But if someone does something 80% as good as you, that's probably good enough. And who knows, the 20% which is different might actually be better than you would do. But you've got to take that risk to let things go. But you've got to do it in a controlled way. Hence the purpose of this call later, I guess.
Okay, fantastic. So we are going to move in a second. We just had to have a couple of comments. So Gavin pretty much said sort of the very similar things that we do. So the manager doesn't know how to do it, or you don't communicate the guidelines well enough, or things like that. So 100% Gary. Now, we've also had Barry, who's the king of delegation, who has a rather unique problem.
I think what he should do, I think he should have lunch with me after the show today, is what I think.
You'll be buying.
That'll be buying, yeah. That's why he's on the train up from London right now to have lunch with me. So that's what I think you should do, Barry.
I see. And then we've got Judith saying, yes, this is such a common one.
Yes. And in many cases, that if you've got an environment, there's an environment where you have to say yes. The answer is yes. No. What's the question? No, that's utter rubbish. All that's going to do is create stress and panic and disappointment. And no. So no.
Actually, incidentally, just on that one point, I've been doing a lot of video testimonials lately for some clients, and the common theme that comes through, especially with this one client, is if they can't do it, they tell us. So we've got a level of trust because I know that they're going to be honest with us. So people actually, as much as you fear sort of saying like, oh, actually, that's not going to work for me in that time frame, or giving boundaries back because you think it might disappoint people, in actual fact, pushing back and sort of giving that, actually, this is what happens, or this is what I need, people respect it more and they respect you more. So that's something to think about there, because genuinely in the last, I think, 5 testimonials, every single person's mentioned that. So just putting it down.
Yeah, I think it's very valid.
Okay, so Mike, moving on to the next thing, which is delegation. Is it just one block of thing? Is it just one thing that you can do? Or, as we so often like to do in this show, can we break it down into more manageable steps or processes? Because we like that.
As it turns out, we can.
Kelsey, please.
Right, the 3 different types of delegation. Now, this is as a business owner. You own a business. You might be a solopreneur. You might have 100 staff. I don't know, but you do need to get rid of things, get them off your plate onto somebody else's, and you need to do it properly, and you need to do it in a controlled way. And there are different ways that you can do that. Tasks we all have. If you've got a virtual assistant, in my case, I have a personal assistant and 2 team members. I constantly give tasks out. They're normally one-off things that just needs to be done. So this morning, for example, in fact, I'll tell you what I'll do. Let me just define it even better for you. Trigger an activity and an outcome. So this every day I get people accepting my invitations to connect on LinkedIn or inviting me to connect. So then I send that to Melanie, that email, forward it on. That's the trigger. And then she knows what she has to do with them. She has to load them up on CRM, because the outcome is everybody's on our system properly encoded so that I know what they're there for. And that's what she does. So all I have to do is send an email. Now, I could completely outsource that, but I like the email because I can put a few little notes sometimes in it. So that system works for me. That's an outsource of a task.
It's
a repeated
task. Very clearly defined.
Very clearly defined. Happens a lot. We've worked out the little process. So she's very clear what needs to be done. Just does it. Don't even check. It happens every time. 100%, right? We also get workflows, which in simple terms are a series of tasks, really. So there's a trigger. This thing happens, and then all of these tasks happen as a result. So, for example, I sign up a contract to do a piece of work. I inform Melanie, that's the trigger. She then knows when to contact me to say, is it okay to send the invoice? She sends the invoice. She chases the debt. She organizes the payment, yada, yada, yada. I don't do any of that. The outcome is that we get paid. I mean, that's simply it, really. So there's a workflow. Now, the thing with workflows is a really important point. You have to specify them. You have to process map them. You can't just say you're in charge of that now. You have to sit down, and basically what you do is you just specify each of the tasks. It's the easy thing to do. And a task, this is the trigger. This is what you do, and this is what we look as the outcome. In simple terms, that's what it is. Okay. We're going to dig a little deeper into that in a second, but that pretty much is. And then there's that sequence of them all added together with the overall outcome for the workflow. Then the last thing is a function where you just basically empower someone. So again, you're looking for a combination of workflows triggered by various different things, but now you are no longer in charge of the trigger. Somebody else is. They spot the trigger and they issue the workflow, and you get KPIs to manage that. So that's a bigger thing. So you might outsource, say, to an external company to do your social media. So you agree the KPIs, and it's up to them how they do that. Really.
Yeah, or it might be if we relate it back to the pod system where we've had in recruitment, you would essentially have a pod owner who owns a pod of doing something within recruitment, and you just check that the right amount of placements are being made, or the right amount of things are getting across, stuff like that. Yeah,
good example. Yeah, and the KPIs are the dashboards, the performance dashboards that you agree. So it is an empowerment, though. You're empowering a function to someone, and that function can involve many people in it. It can be, like you say, a pod, or it can just be one thing. You are now in charge of that, and away it goes. So, but we are just going to talk really about tasks, because they're the very center of what we do. And let me just come back on screen for this. They're the very center of what we do. And if you can't outsource the tasks, then quite frankly, you can't do the other two, right? So we are going to look at that in more detail now.
Okay. All right. So I know that you mentioned in the post for today the 4 T's of delegation, and I'm assuming that's what we're going to go and have a look at now, is it?
Well, let's just do that then. Yes, we are. This has been when I used to teach delegation some time ago. This is pretty much it. So this is half a day, half a day workshop right here. But let's see what we can do in the time that we have. So when you delegate something, the first question is the person I'm delegating to or the company I'm delegating to, if you're going for kind of external business, able to complete it? And do they have the knowledge, the skills, the attitude, the approach that they need in order to do this? And that's a really important question, because if the answer's no, they don't have the knowledge, but they do have the attitude and the potential, then that is a coaching situation. And it's really important to think about delegation. In fact, I think that, there we go. Let me just bring that up, make a point. It's a fabulous coaching tool. It's just a great way to develop people. Now, once you've asked that question and you're certain that this person can either just do it or they could do it with some help from you, the next thing are the touch points. Now, if you're working with someone to develop them, then you're going to need to have touch points before the deadline. So if you're coaching someone, you say, oh, okay, you do this, this, and this. Why don't we check in at the end of the week and see how you're doing? Okay, see how far we've reached, rather than waiting for the end and then it all goes wrong and it was unnecessary. Now, I did say you should let people fail, and you should. It's absolutely fine to do that. But it's, if you can avoid it through coaching, then you should.
And there's levels of failure, isn't it? There's catastrophic failure, and I attempted something small, it's had a minimal effect, I'll just have another go. There's different levels of failure.
Don't see this as delegation, this instance. See it as coaching. You've got someone that's not quite where you want them to be. You want them to take ownership for this task because it's a recurring task. I wouldn't bother if it wasn't, but this happens a lot. I want you to own it. I want to be able to just say, hey, that thing, could you just do it? Like a button, you press it. And for that, we need to work with you to get your skills where they need to be, and your knowledge and your experience, right? So the touch point is a time or date that you both agree that you will come together. Now, the alternative to an agreed touch point is that, hey, how's it going with that thing? I can translate that for you. I don't trust you to do that thing, so I'm checking in with you to make sure you are doing that thing. And that's rubbish. That's anti everything you should stand for. You're trying to empower people and get people to own things, and yet you don't really trust them. You're kind of sharing the task, really, in a sense, and that's not what you want. So an agreed touch point: do you think we should come together on Friday to talk about this, because you've got to get in by next Thursday? Yeah, that'd be great, Mike. Let's do that. Okay, let's schedule that in, and we'll see how we do. Plus, of course, you make it clear that they can have a touch point anytime they want one. So if you've agreed to catch up on Friday, but they need your help now, well, that's fine then. Yeah, I'm stuck on this. Well, okay, let's work through it together. But it's coaching. You're not instructing people. It's a coaching environment, and you'll get more from people if you do that, massively so. Time really is all about the capacity to complete, what we were talking about earlier. Do they have the time to do, and the headspace, the concentration levels to do what you want them to do
in the time frame that you want them to do it?
Yeah, that's right. If they don't, then what we're talking about here is really encouraging a value within your business to push back if they can't. That's what we want. We don't want people to be disappointed because something isn't delivered, or it's delivered at a lower quality. And we certainly don't want people to be stressed out because they're overworked. Neither of those is acceptable. So you build into it to people this value that if you can't do what I'm asking you to do, then you must say so, and we'll figure it out, because I can get you to stop doing something else you're doing for me, or we can move it around so that we cut you a bit more time, or extend the deadline, or do something. We can make it work for you. And that's really important. And then the terms are the actual the meat of the delegation itself.
So the social contract of it, as it were.
It is a social contract, as our friend Alan Kenny would say. Only 3 things, really, to make it dead simple: the outcome that you want, and how you specify that is entirely up to you. But there has to be a very clear definition of what it is that you want. What does success look like for you? In other words, when this thing is done, what is an acceptable level for you? And you need to communicate that. Priority is important, as we said, because people have got a lot of things to do, how do they know this is more important than the thing you gave them this morning? One of the ways that you can do that is you can explain what will happen. It's called consequence of failure. What happens if you don't do this thing? So if you don't collect that money by Friday, we go bankrupt. Would suggest that it's quite a high priority, I would think.
Well, yeah, I probably wouldn't want that to
Yeah,
be on my desk,
yeah.
really.
Well, of course. Now, if you say something like, well, and of course it's tied in with deadline because that's a constraint. If you're tied in with, well, I need this by next Thursday, but I've got until Monday if you need it.
Yeah.
That's a different level of priority. Clearly, it's not as high a priority as something else. Now, you should also encourage people to discuss priorities with you. Goes back to
Yeah,
the
they've got
time in the
other
previous.
things, especially if people have got other bosses. Because sometimes within a
Well,
company,
yes,
people have 4 or 5 bosses, and they're like, "Well, I'm doing this for Gary, this for Sue, this for Mike. What's my
yes.
priority here?"
And also, if people are using external suppliers, they've got more than one client. So most people have, and so you need to work with them to make sure that they know what they're supposed to be working on for you and where the effort is going to be. And that's your job to do that. It's nobody else's job. I think Gavin alluded to this earlier. If a piece of delegation fails, it's the delegator's fault, not the delegatee.
Mm.
And so you got to get these things right. But the consequence of failure is quite a useful one if you really want to get a point across. If we don't have that, if I don't have that report by Friday, I won't be able to deliver the presentation on the following Monday, and we won't get that deal, which could cost us, £100,000 or whatever. So that's quite important. If you're looking at, say, you're using offshore, say, to do some resourcing for something for you, then they're going to need priority from you.
Mm-hmm.
They are definitely going to need to understand what it is that they should be working on, because the chances are you'll give them too much for their capacity, I would think.
Okay, so let's move on to the constraints, Mike, because I think we're running out of time otherwise.
Oh, are we? Yeah, well, let's crack on with that then. So they're fairly simple, really. The only constraint that really matters is deadline. It's often not communicated enough, and that's a shame because there's an implicit, well, I know when the deadline is, don't you? Well, no, not unless you tell me. So it's really important to communicate when you want something for, and kind of how fluid that is. Now, I definitely need it by then because of this reason, versus, well, then, or maybe then would be fine. There are other constraints if people are doing things, especially external people. Budget, how much money you can spend, what resources you can use, you're available. So if you want to, I don't know, get a couple of people from the support team to come and help you with this, can you do that? Is that possible? No, we haven't got anyone to spare. You've got to do it on your own. So these are the kind of things that people will want to know. And regulations, rules, really, sometimes they're government rules, sometimes they're just corporate. This is the way we do things here. You should make that plain as well. I know you could do it that way, but you can't. You've got to do it this way. And then finally, sometimes the politics of the situation.
My least favorite thing when it comes to
I know.
politics.
It only really matters in a bigger organization, but sometimes you have to draw people's attention. You can't do that because so-and-so won't like it. So no, you have to do it this way because that's the way it is. So they're just things to be aware of, really. What to start with, just think outcome. This is what I want. This is what success looks like. Priority, so that people can understand when they've got to do it for, and deadline. And bring in the other things if you need to. But pretty much it's those three, truth be told.
Okay,
Now,
fantastic.
there is one other thing, if I can just round off on this, and then I'll come back to you, is this, right? The easiest way to understand whether what's in your head has been communicated to the other person is to ask them to play back to confirm what it is that you've asked for. Because in an ideal world, you would write down the thing you wanted to delegate in an email. And certainly, if it's a repetitive task, it is worth doing that, or some kind of process that you've got that you want to communicate, because it's going to be done many times over. So you may as well take the time to get it done right. If it's just a one-off, reality, it may happen, it may not. You may just blast out a quick email, or you might just pick the phone up. But whatever you do, if you can just ask them to replay what it is. So can you just confirm what it is that you're going to do for me? Is something you'll hear me say a lot. Well, you want me to do this, this, and that by this date, and I can't do this, but I can do this. Yep, that's absolutely spot on. Got you. Because the reason that we do playback, it's one of those reasons where people have heard what you said, but it's not what you meant. It's not what you intended at all, and they've converted that into something else. Very common indeed. So I would urge you to do playback.
Okay, it's fantastic. Now there is a comment here that when you had the picture of, I believe, of a baboon, Barry was mentioning that Pete looks a bit rough. Nikki did come to his defense, but there was definitely a monkey theme on those slides, Mike.
Oh yeah, yeah. There is the monkey theme, because there's that famous book. I think it's by Ken Blanchard. The 1 Minute Manager Meets the Monkey, and the idea is that the monkey is a thing, and you hand it to other people. So you can have the monkey, or they can have the monkey. The monkey can't fall down the middle where you both think somebody else is doing it, and you both can't have the monkey then, because that's a shared task. So, and this idea of passing on the monkey is those terms, really. You have now got the monkey, and the playback is confirmation. You got that? Yeah. Okay. I'm off over here then. We've done the touch points. If you need me, you can come. We're going to talk ADR. We've done the talent. You're the right person for the job. Blah, blah, blah. Over to you then. On to the next. If you get into that habit, then your delegations, your delegations, delegates, whatever, the tasks that you give to other people will work so much better as a result.
Okay, all right. So if I can be so bold, Michael, to just sort of summarize up what we talked about today, delegation is key because you cannot scale. You cannot create a scalable business unless you delegate. And that is whether you're a solopreneur and doing it by yourself with virtual team members or something else, or whether you're growing a larger business with multiple people. It essentially breaks that link between your effort and your reward, which is what scalability is and what we're a huge fan of here. So scalability can very often go wrong because people don't fully understand what they're supposed to do, or you haven't communicated it right. You're asking the wrong person, either because of their talent or because of their timings, the amount of capacity that they've got. People don't push back when you're saying things, so they let you think that they could do it. When they can't, they panic. It goes drastically wrong. And also, as a leader, you just kind of get very attached to your business and think, well, no one's going to be as good for this business as me. And so you sort of hold things in, which can be sort of not really what you want. So to move forward, you need to essentially create tasks which have the right talent doing it. So the right individual who has the skill based. Oh, I've forgotten the other T's now, Michael. I've forgotten the other T's.
I can do those for you without
Okay, well
even
then,
looking, because I've been doing it 100 years. So you get the right talent doing it, right, which is really important. Get some touch points in case you need them. Make sure they've got the time, and get those terms right.
yeah, get those terms right. Okay. So in a second, Mike, I'm going to come for you for the tip which people are going to use if they want to get started with delegation straight away. But before then, just a reminder, next week we are, as Mike alluded to earlier, going to be talking about what you can do if your business has experienced sort of accelerated growth and it's got a little bit out of hand and you feel a little bit frantic, or you're running very, very hot. And we're going to talk about some things that you can do to sort of
We are.
see when
It's
that's
really
happening.
important, massively so, because we want people to realize that that's a big problem. There's this thing, hey, got too much work. That is not a good thing. Certainly not a thing to be proud of. And there are inherent dangers which can be really bad for your business if you carry on and don't do something about that. So, and it's not just about hiring more people, because that can make things worse occasionally. So we are going to cover this, where you outgrow your strength, how you can spot it, and what you can do about it.
Exactly. So next week, that'll be fantastic. So, Mike, finally, to round us off, what is somebody's watching this, they're thinking, right, I want to start delegating, whether that's growing their virtual team or with the team they've already got. I want to get better at it. What's the first thing that they should do in order to be better at delegation?
Well, obviously, I'd like them to get used to using the terms, all of the T's really, but particularly the terms, and then push out to the talent and the touch points and the time. But really, what I'd like to do before we do anything else is just start asking for playback. Can you just confirm what it is that I've just asked you to do there? Right, unless it is so blatantly obvious, or you put it in an email and you've specified, can you ring Fred Bloggs and get me lunch next Wednesday at 12 o'clock? That's fine, right? But if it's a task that they've never done before, or it's got any kind of complexity to it, then when you've explained it, could you just confirm what it is that you're going to do, and just make sure that exactly what you've asked for is what you get, 100%.
Okay, fantastic. So, once again, I would like to thank everybody for watching and for getting involved in the comments. It always makes it a really fun session for us when people get involved. So thank you very much. And Michael, thank you for being just
You're very
spectacular.
welcome. I'm not wearing a loud shirt because I'm going for lunch now, just in case you
I
wondered.
thought you were going to say something else,
Yeah,
and it was
okay.
going to upset me.
Okay, we'll see you all next week, guys.